was the dynamic between you and your parents? Because obviously your parents were very Christian. They grew up
Yeah.
teaching you about Jesus and the Bible. And now
Yeah.
you become at this age where you start to make your own decision and you have homosexual desires. How did that work out between you and your parents?
Well, I hid it. I hid it behind closed doors. They didn't know anything. I was secretly wearing my mom's clothing, secretly watching porn, secretly dealing with identity issues. I played sports. I started taking sports serious, like going into high school. And so that's how I would hide my sexuality, because I was actually pretty good. I would say I was pretty good at basketball. We're getting pretty good my freshman year of high school. But I started disguising myself behind playing sports, lifting weights, hanging out with the boys and all that stuff. But deep down inside, I was dealing with some deep identity issues and confusion because of what had been introduced to me as a child. And so I would hide that darkness that I was dealing with, by playing sports and trying to be a good student and all that stuff. But deep down inside, I was dealing with so much. So I did a really good job of hiding that part of me.
You talked about identity crisis.
Yeah.
I hear a lot about that, but I don't necessarily know what it means. Can you explain to you what that felt like?
Yeah, just being lost in myself, not knowing who I was. I feel like in Jeremiah chapter 1, the Lord talks about how he created Jeremiah before Jeremiah was even formed in his mother's womb. He ordained Jeremiah as a prophet. He said, before you were even formed in your mother's womb, Jeremiah, I knew you. So I believe everybody on this earth has a God-given gift, has a God-given purpose that the Lord has given them. But the devil, he comes to still kill and destroy. And so he will place things in your life. He will sow seeds in your life to try to distract you from the purpose that God has for you. And so that's exactly what the devil did for me, sowing that seed of homosexuality into my life, which ended up growing and growing. And so I was dealing with identity issues. I wanted to do right. There was times even in high school where I wanted to serve the Lord, where I wanted to be a man that didn't struggle with those type of homosexual desires. But because of the seed that was sown to me as a child, I dealt with these things. And what I needed was deliverance from the Holy Spirit, because he's the only one that can take your identity issues away from you, and heal you and deliver you. But I didn't know that. I didn't have that at the time. So what I would do is I would, just hang around the wrong crowd. I even got into smoking weed, not on a consistent basis. I only smoked weed once, but I remember trying to find my identity in that and just trying to hang out with the wrong crowd, the ones that seemed like they were like the coolest kids in school. I would try to hang out with them and try to fit in with them. But deep down inside, I was dealing with a lot of different things. And so what I needed was Jesus, but I didn't know how to access him in that time.
I have a question about this because I used to be an athlete, and I'm very curious. How did that work in the locker rooms? Because I know the atmosphere of a locker room. I didn't play basketball, but I assume that it's kind of similar. How did you deal with that in such an environment that is masculine with the things that are going on inside of you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was never attracted to any of my teammates or any of the guys that I played basketball with at school or AAU. The reason why is because the type of perversion that was sown into me by the devil was a perversion where I had an attraction to transgendered type of men, that men who kind of like were transitioning to females and stuff. So these are the type of men that I used to have sex with and get with, were men who later on planned on transitioning to females. I don't know how that ended up working out. Is this the tricky plan of the enemy? But what the devil would try to confuse me with is trying to make me think that the same way I would have sex with a man is the same way I would have sex with a girl. And so he sowed that perversion into me, and I believed in that lie, that I wasn't really, I would think to myself that I'm not really gay because I'm not the one that's bending over. Just to keep it real, Gabriel, like the perversion that I had in my mind was, well, if it's a man that is acting like a woman, then it's not really gay. It's not really gay, but deep down inside, I knew it was gay and I knew it was wrong. But I just needed Christ to take these things away from me.
Yeah, most of those people that's a part of that lifestyle, especially the ones that, purport themselves to be the dominating ones, the one that's not quote unquote bending over, they always purport themselves to be not quote unquote gay. And especially if they dealing with, and this is like the new thing, especially if they dealing with a quote unquote woman that was a man that's, that transitioned into a woman, or that's going into the process of transitioning. They always try to convince themselves that they're attracted to the femininity of that person, not that person. It's just weird, and it's all different types of ways to justify that wicked depravity. That's all it is. At the end of the day, what you're doing is wickedness because you're not in your right mind. You're not dealing with a person that's in their right mind. You're not dealing with the person that's, intrinsically who they're really supposed to be, because they think that there's something else. And that's all gender dynamic. So at the end of the day, it's all wrong. If you're a heterosexual man and you're attracted to a woman and you dealing with a real woman with a real vagina, then that's a real relationship for the most part. But when you're someone that's a heterosexual man, quote unquote, and you're with a transgender woman that's pretty much basically a man, but you convince yourself that this person is not a man because of their femininity and their transition and their delusion, then yeah, man, it's just a bunch of confusion, and you just justify in that way to make yourself feel better in the long run about what you're doing, knowing that what you're doing is wrong. That's what they do. That's why they have all these different battles within their head, within their mind. They just battling within themselves. These people that's a part of that lifestyle.
That was, I guess, the way that you would justify it. It seems like, oh, it's not that bad because it's kind of like a woman.
Yeah, in a sense, that will come across my mind, but I would even justify it in a way of God doesn't have a problem with gays. You know, God doesn't have a problem with you being gay. Because I will also see the confusion of the gay Christian, which there is no such thing as a gay Christian. The same thing, there is no such thing as a murdering Christian or a fornicating Christian. You know, the Bible says that we must, when we name the name of Christ, we should depart from sin, right? But you know, I would see that confusion of the gay Christian movement, and so I would think to myself, maybe I could be a part of that. Maybe I am a gay Christian, or maybe, you know, God made me that way. I started believing that lie as well. And it was so much confusion and so much craziness going on in my mind. But I needed Jesus. That's what I needed. I needed Jesus. I needed the truth. I needed someone to guide me in the ways of the truth, but I didn't have that, you know, because again, I can't really blame my parents. I think a lot of people will listen to my testimony and say, well, you had spirit filled parents. How come they could not discern what was going on? But I did a really good job of, you know, hiding that from them. You know, they didn't know anything. And it's not me to say, God, why didn't you show my parents that I was dealing with homosexuality? I mean, God does things in his own way, you know? So, yeah.
Your story is very interesting. I have a lot of questions for you, psychological questions, because I'm interested. But I want to go back to your relationship. You talked about having relationships. When did you get into your first relationship, and how did that start?
I was 17 years old. There's a guy at my high school that planned on being a transgender. And so the desires that were within me just really moved me to push a relationship with him in secret. And so we started doing sexual things. Once I started getting sexual with him, I was also getting sexual with another guy that was in the same school system as me. Went to a different school. And so I was doing sexual things with them both at the same time. And that was the first time that I started doing sexual things with a male. And I remember how disgusting I felt in that moment. Because I was watching the porn and I was watching the porn. I was uh still watching the RuPaul's race and all that stuff, but now I'm actually doing it. And that was a different feeling. It was like this new levels of sin, this sin on top of sin on top of sin on top of sin. And so I remember the first time doing something sexual with a man and thinking to myself, like, man, like I really did something with another man. I really had sex with another man. And it just opened a door that was very hard to shut, because when you operate in lust, and you start opening that door to lust, it's a snake. It's a demon that's very hard to get rid of. So when I opened that door, it just opened doors for other things as well. A lot of perversion in my life. But yeah, I was 17 years old. I remember I was like a junior in high school. I remember it was that summer going into my senior year of high school where I started, really indulging in these sexual things and with men. And it was a downward spiral, this onward downward spiral from there.
These two people that you talked about, did they know each other or did you have two relationships at the same time?
I don't know if they knew each other. I don't think so. I don't know if they knew each other, but um, they just stayed in the same city that I stayed in, and so I would have sex with them. I would have sex with this one, and then I was in a sexual relationship with that one. I would have sex with this one, and just go back and forth between the two. But I don't know if they knew each other, or not.
I find it interesting that the first relationship you got into was not monogamous. You had kind of two boyfriends at the same time. What do you think that is?
I don't want to even say that they were my boyfriends. They were more like sexual partners. Just manipulating my way into sex and trying to promising them relationships, promising them that I will come out for them and stuff like that because they were open. They were openly gay. But I just wanted to fulfill my lustful desires, and so I would go back and forth. But it could have been worse than what it was. It could have been worse. It could have been multiple men in the city because there was multiple gay men that I had talked about doing sexual things with, but it just never happened. In high school, yeah, I remember meeting up with another guy who was in a similar boat. In that feminine type of spirit, and I remember linking up with that guy and almost having sex with him, but I just chose not to. So I could have had sex with a lot of different men, but these two were the ones that I just kept going on and off with because I was just building soul ties. I just had an emotional attachment to them that I didn't know what it was, but it was a soul tie. Coming to Christ, you realize that's a soul tie, and that's why you keep going back and going back and going back. Because that's just the plan of the enemy.
We all want to be loved, and so I'm wondering, at that time in your life, did you have any desire for intimacy, to have an intimate relationship at all, or you just wanted to have them for sex once in a while?
I think it was more to have them for sex. Yeah, this more. I knew myself in that moment. It was just to have them for sex. Not necessarily to have intimate love. I guess you can say I was looking for love in the wrong places. I should have been seeking Christ. There's a lot more things I was dealing with in that time frame as well, like anxiety, depression. At this time, there are some things that were going on in my home that were taking a toll on me. And I feel like my outlet that I found, my coping mechanism was going to have sex with these men because they made me feel better. But deep down inside, it was just adding more pain and pain and pain on top of pain.
After you followed in the footsteps of your partners and you started developing gender dysphoria, how did that start and how did that process work?
So I went to college. I went to college. I don't believe I mentioned in this video that I played basketball in high school from freshman year all the way to my senior year of high school. And so I ended up getting a college basketball scholarship. I go to college. And when I go to college, I got in a relationship with this girl. But my parents weren't around. I didn't have that Christian standard anymore. I didn't have my parents around to tell me this is what to do, to come back home this time, go sleep this time. I was on my own. And so I started dating this girl at the time, and we got involved sexually. I was drinking. I was living this almost party life. I wasn't too much of a partier, but I was just hanging around the wrong people. Failing my classes. I ended not too far after, and Not too far in the semester, I had quit basketball, just living reckless, and I had accepted that reckless life for myself. And then I ended up transferring schools to play basketball at another school in Florida, which was actually a Christian college, but it never really had that much power or effect on me. I remember, getting back into my Christian roots a little bit, kind of like listening to Christian music and wanting to change my life. But deep down inside, I hadn't made that decision for real. But to answer your question, it was when I transferred back home to a school. It was like the one of the top party schools in Georgia. And I remember I went to the school um to play basketball. I ended up not playing on the team because of COVID. It was around COVID that time. So I quit basketball, and just being lonely and just being bored, I gave fully into that homosexual lifestyle. And so that's when I started to get into wearing women's clothing and wearing heels and buying dresses and stuff. I started acting more feminine, getting my eyebrows done, getting my nails done, wanting to be clean shaven and effeminate. Not saying if you're clean shaven, you're effeminate, but my motive at the time was, to be more feminine, to be more like a woman. And it was a spirit that I strongly believe I had received from being with those transgender men, these men who had desires to be transgender. I remember even having thoughts in my mind to even transition myself. Thoughts about, do I want to cut my penis off? Thoughts of, do I want to make that full transition to a female? But I would always say that, I was more of like a gay male, still a male, but just super feminine, wanting to be a low key, wanting to be a drag queen and get into that lifestyle. But um, thank God for his grace, because as I look back now at the trajectory of where the enemy wanted me to go, he wanted me to be a transgender. He wanted me to make that decision to cut my piece off and make that decision, that indefinite decision to become a female. But if I did that, I would not have my son on the way. I would not be married
Right.
right now. So I praise God and I thank him that I didn't do those things, because I know some men right now who have given their life to Christ, and they've already made that decision, and God is still using them mightily, and they still have a powerful call on their life. But I just think for myself, I could have been one of them, if it wasn't for the grace of God. So I'm so thankful that by God's grace that I didn't make those decisions. But yeah, I was on the verge of becoming a transgender. I was on the verge of fully making that decision to alter my identity for sure.
You see, he said that he was ready to make that transition to alter his identity, to conceptualize himself. That's all that is conceptualizing yourself. It's delusion. You're not necessarily making the real transition. Scientifically, it's just impossible. You cannot go from a man to a woman. It's not real. It's all delusion, and it's just speaks to the vibration of this world that we live in, that's even something that's allowed. Like, we really live in a fucking weird world. It's crazy, man. But yeah, man, that's all it is just conceptualizing yourself when you conform to the agenda of transgenderism and homosexuality, so on and so forth. It's just pure delusion and a psychological imbalance. That's what it is. Now, check out the esoteric angle. The esoteric aspect of this is clear. He's wearing an orange shirt, and the host is wearing a black shirt, representing Saturnian principles and sun worship principles, going back to Horus, aka Heru. You see, the Saturnian and the sun is pretty much interchangeable. So he plays the role of someone who came to enlightenment when it comes to his decision to go back to being normal after he was demonically possessed.
We hear so much more now because it's a fairly new. I don't want to call it a trend, or it's not either a new concept because it's been going on for a while, but it's becoming more popular, transgenderism. And we're starting to see the negative effects of people that do these life-changing decisions and then later regret it, which
Yeah.
I don't think is put in the spotlight enough, because that's something that you can't ever change. You make a mistake
Right.
when you're a kid, your parents allow you to do it or whatever, or even if you're a young adult, and then it takes a few years and you realize, oh no, what did I do? And then you can't ever change
Right.
it. You can't have kids. So I'm really glad that you didn't do that, and now you can
Amen.
have a son on the way. It's beautiful. You talked about wanting to become a woman, and when we hear people talk about transgenderism, they say it's because you were born in the wrong body. Your spirit is female, but your body is male. Did you ever believe that?
Yeah, at times, yes, I did at times, but it wasn't as strong. It wasn't as strong as I'm in the wrong body. I want to switch today, or I can't wait till I become a woman. It just come into my body like, man, maybe God did create me to be a woman. Maybe I am in the wrong body. But I'm thankful for His grace that it never went that far, because just knowing the other things that I deeply indulged in because of the lies of the enemy, I feel like that lie wasn't as loud in my ear for me to fully indulge in. So I thank God for His grace on that.
One of the things I hear a lot about people that are part of the LGBTQ community is that they don't feel good in who they are. So they don't feel good in their body. So they start to embrace who they truly are. And that actually is, some people say it's life changing, it's saving lives. I want to ask you, because you went through that process, you had that mindset for a while. When you started embracing, quote unquote, embracing who you were, did you see any improvement in your quality of life?
Not at all. Not at all. I feel like the more I started embracing um the demonic things in my life, the more of a downward spiral I went. I was dealing with even more depression, even more anxiety. Because for me, by nature, I knew there was something wrong with me. A lot of these people in the LGBTQ community, they try to portray that they're happy living that life, but a majority of them are dealing with suicide. A majority of them are dealing with anxiety. A majority of them are dealing with abuse, whether it's physical abuse in their relationships, or both lesbian and homosexual, or transgenderism, wherever it is. And a lot of them are just dealing with a whole bunch of traumas, because there's a huge percentage in that community who have been molested when they were younger. So it may have been a lesbian woman who was touched by her uncle or touched by her father, and all of a sudden she has this huge resentment against men. So now she finds love in women. It's the same thing with men who may have gotten touched by another man, or may have gotten raped by another man at 7 years old, 6 years old, or touched by a female at that age. One thing I realize is most of the men who get touched by females end up going into a lustful lifestyle with women. And most of the men who are touched by men end up going into a deep lifestyle of homosexuality. And so this whole embracing who you really are, the only way that you can know who you really are is by giving your life to Christ and fully embracing who you are in Christ. And that's the problem with our society today, is our generation and humanity is trying to find their identity and what makes them feel good emotionally in the moment, or what makes them feel good in their flesh. And so I'm so thankful that the Lord took me out of that lifestyle, where I can finally find my identity in Him. And it's through finding my identity in Him that I was able to walk in my full purpose.
Yeah, we started just this little bit by talking about the happiness and fulfillment that you thought you would get by transitioning, that you didn't get. And you say that because you were part of that community, you had relationships with people. You said that there's a lot of people
Mhm.
dealing with suicidal thoughts. And it's interesting because that's what the stats also show. When you look at suicide rates, it's astronomically higher in that community. And people say it's because we're ostracized. It's because we're not accepted in society. But this argument is starting to fall apart as it is becoming embraced by the society, and the statistics are not changing. So you're saying it's not because they're not accepted. From your experience, it's because of what's happening inside of them and what they're embracing that is making them miserable.
Yeah, yeah. I believe love is not acceptance. You know, I can love you, but I don't have to accept your sin. And so I feel like that's a very deceiving trick of the enemy. And I feel like as Christians, we should never underestimate the devil. I don't like giving glory to the kingdom of darkness, but the devil is a very intelligent guy. And so what he would try to do is he would try to make you feel he places a victim mentality inside of that community to try to make us Christians feel bad about preaching the truth of the gospel, which is going to set them free. And they want to silence us by trying to say, hey, your gospel is causing me to commit suicide. But the truth is, the gospel is not the one that's that's causing you to commit suicide. It's the demons that are inside of you that are causing you to commit suicide. So when you see those people saying that we're causing the LGBTQ to commit suicide and we're causing more harm to the society, no, that's just the Antichrist agenda that would rather accept the Islamic message or the Catholic's message or the Merry Christmas message or the Buddhist message or the Pope's message instead of the Christian message, because they know the demons inside of them know that the truth of the gospel sets people free.
Yes, the truth of the gospel does set people free. But this brother right here doesn't have the full truth. This brother is into Christianity, and we already understand that Christianity is not something that's of the full truth. It's based in confusion, going all the way back to 325 AD, which I will do an in-depth video on soon enough. It's very important for us to understand that, because when it comes to that Christianity doctrine, it's meant to confuse people and make people feel like because they are part of that doctrine that, you know, they're better than other people in other religions. Religion is all confusion. The Most High does not preside over any of these religions. The Most High presides over laws, statutes, and commandments. That's the truth. That's the understanding. And when it comes to the Most High blessing certain brothers with this knowledge, you come into the understanding that you are God's chosen by knowing that you're an Israelite, doing the history, going into the knowledge when it comes to you knowing that you're an Israelite and that's your heritage, and following the standard that's, you know, that's along with that in regards to understanding who you are, because the Most High gave the commandments to who? Israel. So everything about coming home to this knowledge comes with understanding who you are when it comes to your heritage, as well as what comes with that standard of who you are, that being the commandments that the Most High gave to Israel through the prophet Moses. So it's very, very important for us to understand what the truth really is, what the skinny really is. What he's saying, part of it is real, but for the most part is based in that nonsense because of what he's been taught in the church system growing up. We have to understand that there's layers and layers and layers and layers of confusion in this world. So you may have an understanding where this brother is on the right side for the most part, but he's still confused because he's a part of Christianity. So that's what I mean about the layers of confusion. It's like part of it is there, but then again, you got to keep digging and digging and digging until you finally understand that, okay, maybe I need to shirk off this, because it's not about religion. It's not about Christianity. It's not about giving your quote unquote life to Christ. It's about humbling yourself to the Most High standard, which is the laws, statutes, and commandments. That's what it's about. Anybody could say that they believe in Christ, they gave their life to Christ and this and that. That's nothing. It's all about understanding what can save you in these last days, and that's following his commandments. That's what it is. Because in the Christian church doctrine, they tell you that you can eat pork. You know, they tell you no sex before marriage. That's all nonsense. That's misunderstanding, misinterpretation, misperception. That's what that is. Fornication is not no sex before marriage. Sex is marriage. But, you know, not to digress. But more also, I want to add, you see the color scheme here. This guy right here, he has the all black aesthetic with the all black on, with the Tammuz chain, the cross. That's for Tammuz. That's not for Jesus Christ. That's not for quote unquote Jesus Christ. That's for Tammuz. And the brother, the young brother who's giving his quote unquote testimony, he has on orange. The orange represents Heru, who is the left-handed version of Christ or Yahushua. So it's more than meets the eye when it comes to what we see in these type of segments esoterically. Not taking away from, how profound this statement is when it comes to what this brother's given, but at the same time, we do have to pay attention to what we see. This is all esoteric. And when it comes to Christianity, that's that's all in the same umbrella of esotericism. Christianity, yes, it is. But this brother, what he was speaking on is very, very commendable. And when it comes to the understanding of this world in regards to what this guy had laid out, when I say this brother, I'm not talking about him, obviously. That's why I had to say this guy. The brother I'm talking about is the brother in the orange. But what this guy laid out, where he said that, the rapid agenda for transgenderism isn't as strong as it was, or wasn't as strong as it is today. Excuse me. Like today is strong. The reason why it's strong today is because it's showing that we are living in these last days. That's what it is. The reason why it's rampant and it's so strong today is because we are nearing the end. That's why. And it's crazy because these people who purport to be Christian, they should even understand that. They read Matthew 24. They should understand the signs and the times. You feel what I'm saying? Like, that's why this is happening, because we're living in these last days. That's why it's so rampant. And yes, man, all the things that he touched on when it comes to young kids and they get molested and that makes them turn into that type of lifestyle, that's what happens 95% of the time. It's not about you being born that way. Once again, you cannot be born that way. A baby does not have a sexual proclivity. A baby is a baby. But by default, he has a natural inhibition. He has a natural inhibition, and most of the time that coincides with being in your right mind in nature. So a baby that's born in his right mind, he's most likely going to be born to be heterosexual. And the reason why I touched on certain things like there's no such thing as sexual orientation. It's not. Because a person naturally is supposed to be what he's supposed to be in regards to a man and a woman, a man being attracted to a woman. Those are things that's natural. So when you have these concepts and these constructs like sexual orientation, all that does is muddy up the waters, and it make people think that when you say stuff like there's no such thing as sexual orientation, it make people think that what you say is crazy because they so used to these things, not knowing that we live in the world of confusion. This is a matrix. This is the Truman Show. This is confusion. We born to accept these things based off of how we've been broken down. But the Most High blessed some of us with the understanding, with the logic, with the reasoning, with the ability to discern and decipher what's really going on out here. And I'm grateful, and I'm sure most of you other brothers are grateful as well. But it's very important for us to understand context and really get into the nitty-gritty skinny of context. Like I said, there's no such thing as a sexual orientation if you really, really understand the real skinny and the real contextual understanding. There's no real such thing as a sexual orientation. You know what I mean? Like gay, straight, that's not real. Those are concepts, those are constructs. Real life is man and woman and children. That's why when you have sex with a woman, what happens? She can get your seed, she gestates it, she delivers it. The fertilization process from the egg and the sperm, all that stuff is natural. All that stuff is natural. When you do such thing as same-sex action, intimacy, whatever you want to call it, it's unnatural. It's reprobate. It's depravity. It's an abomination. Why is that? Because not only is it strange and weird, but scientifically it's off. And there's a reason why there's a stronger chance of you transmitting a disease because of that. So, it's all about understanding the nuance, the real skinny, and just logic. In this world, everything is against logic. This is how you know that we living in these last days, because all these things that's that they pushing, all these different understandings that's being pushed, and everybody coming to a certain understanding and choosing sides. It's really apparent. Like, a lot of people are letting you know what side they on just based off of what they're leaning on, they adhere to, so on and so forth. Like I said, having a conversation with my cousin about certain things about life, and they talking about the earth and we need to take care of the earth and the universe and all this nonsense. Certain things that they wasn't uttering 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It's because they letting you know what side they on without letting you know. because they have no understanding. That's the power of the devil. Not only do they have an understanding, they don't have knowledge of what's right and what's wrong. And that's just what it is, man. But this brother right here, what he said was commendable, and may the Most High be with this brother, and hopefully this brother is able to come to the real understanding when it comes to who the Heavenly Father is and what his standard is.